If stories about people who look like they have everything, but secretly feel one bad day away from breaking, and about a single but honest sentence from a child that cracks open years of grief and guilt, make your chest ache in the best way. Stay with this one until the very end. And if Ethan, Grace, and little Maddie's journey reminds you that kindness can change a whole life's direction, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next slow, healing story on this channel. The red-eye from Los Angeles to Boston was already boarding when Ethan Ward finally shut his phone off. The terminal was a blur of rolling suitcases, half-asleep families, and the flat, mechanical voice of last boarding calls. He moved through it like a ghost in a navy wool coat, the collar turned up against a cold that wasn't in the air. "Good evening, welcome aboard," the flight attendant said, all practiced warmth. "Evening," he murmured. Not really there. He should have been on his company's jet. A mechanical issue and a misaligned schedule had pushed him onto a commercial flight instead. Row 21 aisle. No lie-flat seat, no privacy. He took it as a sign that the universe was in a mood. He slid into 21C, placed his briefcase precisely under the seat, and leaned back. The overhead lights were too bright. The murmur of passengers pressed in. Ethan Ward, founder of Ward Horizon, Billionaire, Innovation Keynote regular, looked like every magazine profile of him: tailored shirt, quiet watch, sharp jaw, but his shoulders sagged. The week had been a blur of boardrooms, press appearance, and hospital corridors. His mother, Helen, was on the transplant list now. Her liver was failing. Time had become a set of numbers on charts and whiteboards. He rubbed a hand over his face. For the first time since his wife's accident 3 years ago, he felt like he might snap. A small voice cut through the static in his head. "Mom, is this our row? The numbers are dancing." He opened his eyes. A little girl in a yellow raincoat stood in the aisle, craning her neck toward the overhead bins. The coat was too big, the sleeves swallowed her hands. A purple backpack shaped like a whale bumped against her legs. Behind her, a woman in a worn gray sweater tried to maneuver a duffel into the overhead compartment. Her dark hair was yanked into a messy knot. She moved with the careful haste of someone running entirely on habit and caffeine. "That's us." "Bug," the woman said. "WNT, 1, B and A, right here." The girl peered at Ethan's seat. "So he's C," she declared. "He by a man?" Ethan blinked. She had a round face, big brown eyes, and a pink bandage on one knee. A small stuffed fox dangled from her backpack zipper by its tail. He managed a polite nod. "Hi, Osai," he said. She studied his face with an intensity that made him want to look away. Then she tilted her head. "You look really tired," she said matter-of-factly. "Like my mommy after 3 nights at the hospital." "Madeline," the woman hissed, cheeks flushing. "We talk about using inside thoughts." The girl, Madeline, clapped a hand over her mouth. "Sorry," she whispered, eyes wide. "I didn't mean to be rude." Something in Ethan's chest twitched. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You're not wrong." Her shoulders relaxed. The woman finally wrestled the duffel into place and slid into the window seat, guiding Madeline into the middle. "Sorry," she murmured to Ethan, voice low. "She narrates the world." "It's fine," he said. "I've met worse critics." The engines hummed to life. The cabin lights dimmed. Madeline twisted in her seat, pulling the whale backpack onto her lap. She dug through it with the focused energy of a paleontologist excavating a fossil. She produced a pack of crayons, a dog-eared coloring book, and a small, crumpled paper bag. From the bag, she pulled a cookie roughly the size of her palm. She broke it in half with great ceremony. One piece went into her mouth, the other she held out toward Ethan. "For you," she said. "Cookies help when people look tired." He froze. In another life, a smaller hand had pushed a slice of cold pizza toward him at the kitchen table. "You look droopy." His little boy had said. "Eat this." It has cheese magic. That life had ended at an intersection on a rainy night. He swallowed. Thank you, he said. You're welcome, she replied, like they'd completed an important ritual. He took a bite. It was too sweet and a little stale. It was the best thing he'd tasted in weeks. By the time the plane leveled out above the clouds, Madeline's head had nodded forward onto her stuffed fox. Her mother was still sitting upright, staring at the safety card like it contained answers to bigger questions. Within minutes, her eyes slid closed. Her chin dropped to her chest. Ethan glanced over. The woman's name, he'd hear it later, was Grace. Right now, she looked like exhaustion given human form. Shadows under her eyes. Mouth turned down at the corners, even in sleep. A hospital badge clipped to her sweater read G. Miller, clinical assistant. Madeline shifted in her sleep, listing toward Ethan. Her head bumped his arm and stayed there, tucked against his bicep, breath warm through the fabric. He stiffened. He could have gently moved her back. He didn't. He stayed very still and watched the clouds outside disappear into night. For the first time in a long time, someone had looked at him and not seen a CEO, a headline, or a walking solution to their problems. A child had looked at him and simply said the truth. You look really, really tired. The words settled somewhere deep, like a hand placed gently on his back, steadying him. He closed his eyes and, despite himself, dozed. And he lost them in the shuffle of arrival. Boston's airport spat passengers into bright, sleepless corridors. Ethan took a work call by the baggage carousel. When he turned back, the yellow raincoat and whale backpack were gone. He told himself that was fine. They were strangers. A quiet night on a noisy plane. A cookie, nothing more. But as the car ferried him through wet streets toward Massachusetts General, he caught himself glancing into every cab they passed, as if a small face might be pressed to the glass. By the time he reached his mother's floor, he'd shoved the thought away. Hospitals didn't care about airplane coincidences. They cared about lab results and organ availability. The hepatology ward smelled of antiseptic and something older stale coffee. Weariness, the heavy quiet of long waits. His mother's room was half lit, blinds drawn against the gray dawn. Helen Ward used to fill every room she entered. She'd raised him alone, working 2 jobs, laughing loud, insisting that burnt toast was just extra crispy. Now her skin had taken on a yellow tinge. Her hair, once iron gray and thick, hung in thin waves. There were still flashes of the old spark in her eyes, but they came less often. Ethan, she rasped, spotting him in the doorway. You're either very early or very late. It's technically both, he said, taking the chair beside her bed. She reached for his hand. You look like hell, she observed. So I've been told, he replied. Her brows lifted. By who? A brave shareholder. A 4-year-old critic at 30,000 feet, he said. She smiled, lips cracking a little at the edges. Smart kid, she murmured. They talked about nothing and everything. The weather, a neighbor's cat, a memory of when he'd once tried to cook pancakes and nearly set the apartment smoke alarm on fire. Eventually, she fell asleep mid-sentence. He sat for a while, listening to the beeping machines. On his way out, he stopped at the nurse's station to ask about her latest labs. He was halfway through the question when a small voice exploded down the hall. Mom, look, it's the airplane man. A streak of yellow raincoat and purple backpack barreled toward him. Ethan turned. Madeline skidded to a stop at his feet, socks squeaking on the polished floor. See, she gasped, pointing at him, face lit up. I told you he was real. Behind her, in pale blue scrubs and a white coat jacketed around her shoulders, stood Grace. She froze mid-step. Oh my God, she breathed. It's you, up close, in harsh fluorescent light. She looked even more tired than she had on the plane. But there was something else too. A quiet strength, a steadiness. Hey, he said. Hey. she echoed, then winced. Sorry, not very original. Madeline tugged at his sleeve. Are you still tired? She asked. A little, he admitted. She frowned, considering. Do you need another cookie? She asked seriously. This time, he laughed. A real, surprised sound that made a nurse glance over. I'll keep that in mind, he said. He learned more about Grace in pieces. The next time he saw her, she was helping an elderly man shuffle down the hall, her hand hovering just above his back, not quite touching, letting him feel his own strength. Almost there, Mr. Jacobs, she murmured. Last 10 steps are victory lap. Another time, she was at the nurse's station, hair escaping its tie, scribbling detailed notes on a scrap of paper while a doctor rattled off instructions too quickly. Later, he found her in a quiet alcove, flipping through a medical textbook with a cracked spine, the pages held together with tape. On the cover, in faint marker, Grace Miller, Harvard Med. You went to Harvard, he asked, before he could stop himself. She stiffened, then turned the book over like she could hide the words. 2 years, she said. Before life. Redirected me. Redirected, he prompted. She closed the book gently. I got pregnant, she said. My dad got sick. The loans got heavy. One of those things alone I could have handled. All of them at once. She shrugged. I took a temporary leave. Temporary turned into permanent. Her voice didn't tremble. It had the flatness of someone who'd told the story enough times that it no longer belonged fully to her. Do you miss it? He asked. She stared at her hands. I miss the feeling of knowing exactly what I wanted, she said quietly. I miss the OR, the idea of stitching something broken and seeing it work again. But I'm not ashamed of where I am. I've got Maddie. She's my best chapter. As if summoned, Madeline rounded the corner, trailing a balloon on a hospital string. Look, Mom, she shouted. I made Mr. Bear a patient. He has 5 Band-Aids. She held up a stuffed animal that looked like it had fought and lost a war with adhesive strips. Grace's face softened instantly. You're the best doctor he could ask for, she said. Ethan watched them. A single mother working nights and double shifts, juggling childcare, pushing a wheelchair with one hand and holding a textbook in the other. Dream detoured, not dead. Something restless stirred in him. Onitam. Ward Horizon's logo was etched into glass on the 37th floor of another building across town. All still and quiet. Ethan sat behind a desk that could seat 6 and stared at the file open on his laptop. Clinical Pathways Initiative Candidate Support Program, draft. The idea had started as a flicker. What if the company provided support for medical personnel who'd had to pause their training, parenting, illness, military service, life? What if non-linear didn't mean no officially? It was about talent retention and long-term brand alignment. Unofficially, it was about one woman in blue scrubs reading anatomy under fluorescent lights. He highlighted a line, Target Pilot Candidate Grace Miller. He deleted her name. If he helped her, it had to be more than a personal favor. It had to mean something for others like her. He emailed the draft to the board. Then he opened a different window, fingers hovering. A quick search of the hospital's applicant database one his company's foundation helped fund brought up a familiar name. Miller, Grace E., Harvard Med, Year 2 leave, application to Hawthorne Surgical Scholars Program, declined, reason gap in education, single parent, risk of non-completion, notes, no interview conducted. His jaw tightened. Someone had looked at a line on a form and decided a whole human being. He closed the laptop harder than necessary. That night, he left 2 new anatomy texts at the nurse's station, wrapped in brown paper, no note. The next morning, he saw Grace carrying them, a stunned smile tugging at her mouth. These were just, here, she told a colleague, like book fair magic. He walked past without breaking stride. He told himself he preferred it that way, helping quietly, No spotlight, no messy feelings. Yeah, he should have known that secrets and hospitals never mix for long. 2 weeks later, Grace appeared in his office. She looked smaller in the doorway, swallowed by the glass and steel. On his desk lay a letter on Ward Foundation letterhead. Dear Ms. Miller, we are pleased to invite you to apply for the pilot round of our Clinical Pathways Reintegration Fellowship. Her hands shook as she placed the paper down. You knew, she said. He cleared his throat. The foundation runs independently, he said. But yes, I supported the program. She searched his face. That's one word for it, she said. Another word might be orchestrated. He opened his mouth, closed it. I read your old application, he admitted. I saw how you were dismissed without a single interview. It was wrong. You deserve another shot. Her laugh came out thin. You decided that for me, she said, without asking. I was trying to make it right, he said, for who she shot back. And for me, or for your conscience, his chest tightened. You told me you missed surgery, he said. You're reading textbooks on your lunch break. You're clearly trying, she cut in. I am trying, and every day, to keep a roof over our heads, to keep my daughter from feeling the cracks. Yes, I miss medicine, but I get to choose how I go back. I get to decide if I'm ready to take on debt and exams and overnight shifts again. She tapped the letter. This makes me feel like a charity project, she said quietly. Like I've been slotted into a story you wrote in your head about yourself. The guy who rescues people. He flinched. That's not. You draped your coat over me in the staff room when I fell asleep, she said. You sat with Maddie when I could barely keep my eyes open. You were there when you didn't have to be. That meant something. But this, she lifted the paper, then let it fall back to the desk. And this feels like you reaching into my life with a checkbook and rearranging it without asking if I wanted the furniture moved. Silence fell like a weight between them. You don't want the fellowship, he asked finally. I don't know, she said. That's the point. You didn't give me the chance to decide before the whole machine started turning. He exhaled. You're right, Whitey said. The words tasted unfamiliar. I should have talked to you first. She blinked, thrown off by the immediate surrender. I'm not saying it's bad, she said more softly. I'm saying I've spent a long time surviving on my own. Offers that look like help often come with strings. I can't afford to get tangled. He nodded once. I understand, he said. If you want to walk away from this, I'll make sure no one holds it against you. The program can exist without your name on it. She studied him for a moment. Then she picked the letter up again, folding it carefully. I need time, she said. You can have it, he replied. As she left, Madeline peeked around her legs, holding a sticker sheet. Bye, Mr. Tired Man, she chirped. I like your building. It's shiny. He managed a smile. Bye, Maddie. The elevator doors closed behind them. For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt the sharp edge of being told no. It stung. It was also strangely clean. Honest? Yeah. It was a fever that unraveled whatever distance remained between them. A storm had settled over Boston, turning the city into a smear of gray and wet. Ethan was going through emails at his kitchen island when his phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. He almost let it go to voicemail. Then he saw the tiny contact photo in the corner. Madeline, sheesh, eyes wide, cheeks sticky with lollipop. A picture she'd somehow taken on his phone months ago. He answered. Hello, Ethan Grace's voice. Panic threaded through it, thin and high. I'm sorry to call you. I didn't know who else. What's wrong, he asked, already reaching for his keys. It's Maddie, she said. Her fever won't come down. It's at 104.8. She's shaking. I tried the clinic number, but they put me on hold and my car won't start and I'm on my way, he said. You don't have to. I'm already coming, he cut in. Text me your address. 15 minutes later, He was pounding up 3 flights of narrow stairs in a building that smelled of boiled cabbage and old carpet. Grace opened the door before he knocked. Her hair stuck to her forehead. Her eyes were wild. In the dim light of the small living room, Madeline lay on the sagging couch, cheeks flushed, hair damp with sweat. She whimpered softly, clutching her fox. "Hey, Bug," Ethan said, kneeling beside her. "Tough night, huh? Everything wobbles," she mumbled. He touched her forehead. She burned. "I'm taking you to the hospital," he said. "Now." He scooped her up, blanket and all, feeling the weight of her small body, the heat, the way her fingers clung instinctively to his shirt. Grace grabbed the green backpack, hands shaking. "I should have called sooner." She choked. "I thought it was just, you did the best you could," he said. "Come on." The ER was a blur of lights and forms and blood draws. They did chest x-rays. They started an IV. A nurse stuck a cartoon sticker on Maddie's hand. "Pneumonia," the attending physician said finally. "We caught it early. She'll need a few days of IV antibiotics, but she's going to be okay." Grace sank into a plastic chair, shoulders shaking. Ethan sat beside her. For a long time, neither of them spoke. "She's all I have," Grace whispered eventually. "Every time she coughs, I feel like the room tilts." He stared at the wall opposite them, plastered with faded murals of balloons. "I know the feeling," he said. "The night of my son's accident. I was in a meeting in San Francisco. I ignored 3 calls before someone from the hospital got through. I missed his last bedtime story because I was negotiating a contract." She turned her head slowly. "You had a son?" she asked. "Micah," he said. The name scraped his throat on the way out. "He was 5. A drunk driver ran a red light. My wife, they both." He couldn't finish. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "For a long time, I thought if I just worked harder, made more money, signed more deals, I could outrun the emptiness." He said, "It doesn't work like that. Turns out grief has better stamina than I do." She let out a shaky breath. "I shouldn't have snapped at you about the fellowship," she murmured. "You were trying to help. I just didn't know how to accept it without feeling small." "You weren't wrong," he said. "I did what I always do. I saw a problem, started pulling levers. I didn't stop to ask what you wanted. I'm sorry." She glanced at him. "That might be the first time a man has apologized to me without a but attached." She said, "No but," he replied. Maddie stirred. "Mom," she whispered, eyes slitting open, "is airplane man." Here Grace smiled, tears rolling over it. "He is," she said. "He came as fast as he could." Maddie's gaze drifted to Ethan. "You still look tired," she murmured. He laughed softly. "Yeah," he said, "but not the same kind of period." She reached weakly toward him, fingers fumbling. "Do you still have the paper plane?" she asked. He blinked. He hadn't thought about it in weeks. On that first flight, after the cookie, she had folded a napkin into a lopsided airplane and drawn a tiny stick figure in the window. "This is you," she'd said proudly, "going somewhere better." He'd slipped it into his wallet, almost as a joke, and never taken it out. "I do," he said now. "I kept it." She smiled faintly. "Good," she whispered. "I like when people keep things." Her hand fell back to the blanket. The monitor beat out steadily. Grace wiped her eyes. "Maybe I do want the fellowship," she said suddenly, voice small but firm. "Not because you arranged it, because I'm tired of telling myself my dream expired." He nodded. "Then we'll make sure it's on your terms," he said. "No hidden strings, no hidden sponsors. If you say no later, it stands." She exhaled, a long, shaky breath like she'd been holding it for years. "Okay," she said. They sat there, Two tired adults in plastic chairs, watching over a small girl sleeping under cartoon rocket ships. Somewhere between the beeping machines and the soft buzz of fluorescent lights, something in both of them shifted. Not fixed, not finished, just willing. 2 weeks later, Ethan got the call he'd been dreading. His mother's doctor sounded older over the phone. "We're reaching the edge of what we can manage without a transplant," he said. "Her numbers are worsening faster than we hoped. We're expanding the search parameters, but we may need to consider living donors." Ethan took the elevator up to her floor, feeling like the walls were closing in. Helen sat propped up in bed, knitting lopsided scarves for grandkids she'd never met. "Don't look at me like I'm already gone," she said when he walked in. "It's bad for my morale." He sat down, trying to steady his voice. "They're talking about live donors," he said. "I'll get tested." She shook her head. "Different blood type," she reminded him. "We checked that in the 'you were a stubborn teenager' phase." He swallowed. "I'll find someone," he said. "I'll call everyone I know. You can't buy a liver." "Ethan," she said gently, "that's not how this works." And after he left her room, he dug his nails into his palm in the hallway until it hurt. He was used to fixing things. This, he could not brute force. He was still standing there, staring at a vending machine, when Grace found him. She'd come straight from a shift. Her hair was pulled back, her scrubs dotted with faint stains. "I heard," she said quietly. He stared at the buttons labeled 6 chips, E2 soda, as if they were some ancient code. "There was talk of live donors," he said. "We're not a match. The list is long and slow. I don't know how I got tested," she said. He turned sharply. "What for compatibility?" she said. "I volunteered. I thought, if I was a match, I could at least offer." His vision tunneled, and he asked, barely breathing. She met his eyes. "I'm a match," she said. The words landed like a punch and a lifeline at once. "No," he said immediately. "Absolutely not." "It's not your decision," she replied, calm in a way that made his panic feel louder. "You have a little girl," he argued. "You're about to restart your training. This surgery is dangerous. You could die," she finished. "Yes, I read the risk sheets 10 times. Then why would you?" "Because your mother held my hand when Maddie spiked that fever," she said. "Because she made sure we got a private room for one night when I couldn't afford it. Because you showed up when I called. Because for the first time in years, I feel like my life is more than just treading water." She stepped closer. "And because," she added, voice awoke but unshakable, "somewhere in the middle of all this, I stopped being able to imagine the world without you in it." His throat closed. "That's not a reason to put yourself on an operating table," he said hoarsely. She gave a small, mock smile. "Maybe not for some people," she said. "But I've spent years watching patients wish for one more holiday, one more breakfast, one more chance to say the things they never did. I don't want to spend my life collecting regrets because I was too scared to do anything that mattered." Tears burned behind his eyes. "You think I could live with myself if something happened to you?" he asked. "If Maddie lost you because of—" She reached out and placed her palm flat against his chest. "Ethan," she whispered, "this isn't about debt or obligation or balancing some ledger you keep in your head. This is about me making a choice with my own body, my own life. Let me decide what I can live with." He closed his eyes. He could feel her heartbeat under his hand now, where he'd unconsciously covered hers. "I don't know how to let people do that," he said quietly. "Decide for themselves. I always want to protect, control, fix." "I know," she said. "It's one of the things that makes you good at your job. It's also one of the things that built this cage around your heart." She squeezed his fingers. "You don't have to approve," she murmured. "You just have to not stand in the way." He laughed. a broken sound. "You're infuriating," he said. "Yes," she replied, "and I'm still doing it." The morning of the surgery, the hospital lights felt too bright. Forms had been signed, risks explained, consents given. Ethan sat between two pre-op rooms, elbows on his knees, hands threaded through his hair. If he looked right, he saw his mother behind a curtain, gray hair tucked into a surgical cap, eyes hazy but determined. If he looked left, he saw Grace, also in a cap and gown, Ivor line snaking into the crook of her arm, monitors beeping softly. "What are you doing out here?" Helen called, her voice thin but sharp. "Come in and say goodbye properly. I'm not going to my own surgery while my son lurks in a hallway." He stood, throat tight. In her room, she reached for his hand. "If this goes wrong, I want you to promise me something," she said. "Don't," he began. "Promise," she insisted. He swallowed. "Okay," he said. "What, you will not spend the rest of your life angry at yourself," she said. "You will not use my death as an excuse to stop living yours. And you will not let that woman down." He blinked. "That woman, Grace," she said. "The one with more courage than sense. My kind of girl." His mouth twitched. "She's risking everything," he said. "She's choosing," Helen corrected. "Don't cheapen it by calling it a sacrifice for you. People like her choose to love in ways most of us are too scared to." He bent and pressed his forehead to her knuckles. "I'm not ready to lose you," he whispered. "Newsflash," she said. "No one ever is." He laughed, tears spilling over. "Go, she ordered. "Tell her something real before they drug her up." In Grace's room, she lay staring at the ceiling, fingers whirring the edge of the sheet. "Hey," he said. She turned her head. "Hey," she echoed. For a moment, his mind went blank. All the speeches he'd rehearsed in the car vanished. "I'm terrified," he said finally. "Me too, Cyril," she replied. He moved closer. "I keep thinking about how my life has been divided into before and after," he said. "Before the accident. After. Before I shut down. After. This feels like one of those lines." She nodded faintly. "It is," she said. "For all of us." "I don't have the right words," he said. "But I need you to know you already changed everything before you ever agreed to this. On that plane, in those hallways, you and Maddie. You woke me up." Her eyes shone. "You brought me back to the door of the OR," she whispered. "Even if I never finish med school, even if I never become a surgeon, I got to feel like I was part of something bigger than my bills again. That matters." He took her hand. "I'm not good at asking," he said. "But if we get another shot at all this, my mom, you, Maddie, me, I want to do it right. No more half-present, half-asleep version of me. I'm in, Grace. All the way." She smiled, small and tired and radiant. "Hold that thought," she murmured. "Ask me again when I'm not full of anesthesia." He brushed a kiss against her forehead. "I will," he said. As they wheeled her away, Maddie appeared at the end of the hall with a nurse, clutching her stuffed fox, wearing an oversized surgical mask decorated with drawn-on whiskers. "Mom," she called, voice echoing. Grace lifted her head. "I love you, Bug," she called back, "more than all the planes and cookies and foxes in the world." "That's a lot," Maddie shouted. The doors to the OR closed. Hours stretched. Ethan paced, sat, stood again. At one point, Maddie climbed onto his lap, exhausted, her head dropping against his chest. He held her like he had the night of the fever. He'd never prayed much. He found himself doing it now, whispering bargains to any listening ear. "Take my money, my work, my name. Just bring them back." At last, a surgeon in blue scrubs in a clear plastic shield appeared. "Mr. Ward." Ethan stood so fast that Maddie slid gently to the chair. "Yes," He said, the surgery went well, the Mardium. The surgeon said, your mother's new liver is working beautifully. Miss Miller is stable. She'll be serious. Tired, but she's strong. His knees buckled. He had to grip the back of the chair to stay upright. Thank you, he managed. The surgeon nodded and moved on. Maddie stared up at him. Does that mean Grandma Helen is okay? She asked. It means they both get another chance, he said, voice rough. She exhaled dramatically. Good, she said. I still need Grandma to teach me knitting. You're bad at it. He let out a wet laugh. True, he said. I am. Recovery was not a montage. It was messy and slow and full of small indignities. Helen cracked jokes through the worst of the pain, but slept more than she talked. Her color improved by shades. Her laugh came back in fragments. Grace tried to wave off concern, but the surgery had taken a toll. She moved slowly at first, hand pressed to her incision when she sneezed. She complained about hospital food. She sent Maddie home with lists of cartoons to watch. Ethan divided his time between their rooms, shuttling juice and updates, pretending he wasn't constantly on the verge of tears. One afternoon, he walked into his mother's room to find Helen and Grace sitting side by side, IVE poles between them like strange, metal trees. Helen had maneuvered her chair next to Grace's bed. Their hands were clasped. You're supposed to be resting, he said. Bossy, Helen muttered. You get that from your father. She squeezed Grace's fingers. This one, she said to him, jerking her chin toward the younger woman, is family now, whether you deserve her or not. Grace laughed weakly. Your mother is intimidating, she whispered to Ethan. I know, he said. She frightens boardrooms. Helen smiled, eyes glassy. You saved my life, she said to Grace. But more than that, you gave my son permission to be human. I hope you know that. Grace's own eyes filled. I just did what I could, she replied. Exactly, though, Helen said. That's what saves people. Not miracles. Ordinary. Stubborn. What I can... Later, when his mother drifted off and a nurse wheeled her back to her own room, Ethan sat on the edge of Grace's bed. She was half asleep, half aware, pain meds smoothing some edges and sharpening others. You still owe me a conversation, he said softly, about what she mumbled, about messy, real, beautiful things. He replied. She cracked one eye open. That sounds like a lot of homework, she said. I'll give you extra time, he said. She smiled. Yeah. Spring arrived slowly in Boston. Snowbanks shrank into dirty puddles. The air lost its knife edge. Trees budded cautiously along the Charles. Ethan brought his mother home to a small house with a wide porch on the outskirts of the city. She insisted on cooking within a week, brandishing a wooden spoon like a sword when he tried to help. You almost burned water as a teenager, she said. You don't get near my stove. Grace was discharged to her own apartment, but the hospital followed her home in a folder of instructions and a schedule of follow-ups. For a while, their lives orbited each other in cautious circles. He texted her check-ins. She replied with brief updates. Maddie, of course, ignored any concept of boundaries. She demanded video calls at bedtime. She showed Ethan every new Band-Aid, every wobbly drawing, every stuffed animal she decided was now a doctor. One evening, as the sun bled orange through his living room windows, his phone buzzed. Maddie's face filled the screen. Hi, she shrieked. Look, look, look. She held up a piece of paper so close to the camera that he could only see blue scribbles. What am I looking at, he asked, grinning. She pulled it back. On the page was a drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands. One had messy brown hair. One had a long dress and yellow hair. Between them, a small figure in a pink triangle dress and a purple backpack. Above them, in shaky letters, so his chest tightened. Do you like it, she asked. I love it, he said, voice thick, Behind her, Grace appeared on the couch and a blanket over her lap, hair in a loose braid. Sorry, Bob, she said, taking the phone. She insisted. Don't apologize, he said. It's one of the best things I've ever seen. Grace's expression softened. You free this weekend? She asked suddenly. He blinked. Probably so, he said. Why I got my fellowship schedule, she said. I want you there when I sign the papers. And my mom is coming into town to meet. All this, all this, she gestured around her small living room. Whatever we are, she said, it feels official. I think my mother should know the man whose organs we've been sharing a house with, metaphorically speaking. He laughed. I'll be there, he said. Yeah. The fellowship orientation was held in a modest auditorium at the teaching hospital. Rows of nervous faces, some older than the typical residents, filled the seats. A banner on the wall read, Clinical Pathways Reintegration Cohort, Ward Foundation Pilot. Ethan sat in the last row. Grace stood near the front, a folder in her hands, her name on the program. She wore a simple navy dress and sensible shoes. A small scar peeked above her collarbone, a reminder of what she'd risked. When her name was called, she walked to the front. Her hand trembled just enough to be visible as she signed the fellowship acceptance. She turned toward the audience. For a split second, her eyes found his. He was almost sure she mouthed, "Thank you." He shook his head slightly. Then she corrected herself, whispered, "Thank me," and pressed the pen to the page. Afterward, in the courtyard, he found her under a tree, away from the cluster of faculty. You did it, he said. We did, she corrected. The program. I mean, there were a lot of people. He nodded. Fair, he said. She looked at him, really looked, the way Maddie had on that first flight. I've been thinking, she said, about the lines we draw in our lives, before and after, alone and together, safe and whatever this is. He waited. You said once that you were in, she continued, all the way, that you didn't want to sleepwalk through another version of your life. I remember, he said. She took a breath. Are you still? She asked. Instead of answering, he reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small, clear plastic sleeve. Inside was a napkin, yellowed at the edges, creased and fragile. Folded into a crooked paper airplane. Drawn in the tiny window was a stick figure with a rectangle briefcase. Above it, in faded marker, were 3 shaky words. Go somewhere better. He held it up. She gave me this on the plane, he said. Said it was me. I kept it. Even when I didn't believe her. Grace pressed her lips together, fighting a smile and tears at once. You brought a napkin to a serious heart conversation, she asked. Best I've got, he replied. So far. He took a step closer. Grace Miller, he said, his voice gentler than it had ever sounded in a boardroom. My life has been full of big things, big deals, big buildings, big numbers. But nothing has changed me the way your small things did. A book on a break, a quiet hallway talk, a little girl handing me half a cookie and a paper plane. Her eyes shone. I don't have a ring, he admitted, because I didn't want this to feel polished or planned. I wanted it to feel like us, messy, a little awkward, honest. He placed the paper airplane in her hand. I'm asking, he said, if you'll keep building us with me. Not some perfect magazine version. The real one, with night shifts and kid fevers and my mother showing up unannounced with casseroles. Will you marry me? Not because I owe you or you owe me, but because we both chose to stay when we could have left. She stared at the little plane resting in her palm. Then she looked up at him, eyes overflowing now. Only if we keep this, she said, lifting the napkin. And we tell Maddie it's the most important piece of trash we ever saved. He laughed, relief and joy tumbling out. Deal, he said. She nodded, the movement small but fierce. Yes, she whispered. Of course, yes. He pulled her into his arms. For a second, the hospital courtyard, the city, the whole world narrowed to the feeling of her heartbeat against his chest. They stood like that until a small voice yelled from across the grass. Are we getting cake? Maddie barreled toward them, green backpack bouncing. Did he ask? She demanded, skidding to a stop. Did you say yes? Are we a for real family now, Grandma? Helen said she needs a new victim to teach knitting, and she picked you, and Grace laughed, wiping her cheeks. Yes, she said, to all of it. Maddie threw her arms around both of their legs. That's good, she said seriously, 'cause I already drew it. She pulled a crumpled sheet from her backpack. 3 stick figures holding hands. Above them, a plane. Underneath, a word written in careful caps. Home. A year later, the house in the suburbs smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling in shades of yellow and purple. A banner spelled out Happy 6, Maddie in uneven letters. Crayon drawings wallpapered the fridge. In the backyard, kids ran in crooked lines while adults gathered around a picnic table, paper plates balanced precariously. Helen sat in a lawn chair with a wide-brimmed hat, teaching 2 very serious 8-year-olds how to knit lumpy scarves. She looked stronger than she had in years, color in her cheeks, sarcasm back at full strength. Don't pull so tight. You'll strangle the yarn, she instructed. Inside, Grace adjusted plates of cupcakes on the counter. Her white coat hung on the back of a chair. A stethoscope peeked out of her bag, alongside flashcards covered in hand-drawn diagrams. She had completed her first fellowship year. It was grueling and exhausting and everything she'd hoped for. She caught sight of herself in the microwave door. She didn't look like a woman sleeping on a church step or in the corner of a hospital break room anymore. She looked like someone who had finally stepped back into her own story. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, chin on her shoulder. Overachieving as usual, he murmured. You bought 3 extra dozen cupcakes because you were afraid we'd run out, she said. Project, meet projection. He kissed her temple. Glimpses of the old life flashed through his mind, sometimes penthouse windows, empty beds, the echo of his own footsteps. They didn't hurt the way they used to. They lived beside the new images, now Maddie's backpack by the door, medical journals on the coffee table, his mother humming in the kitchen. Thank you, he said suddenly, for what she asked, for asking if I could stay. That first night, he said. For telling me I looked exhausted when everyone else pretended I was invincible. For giving my mother a second chance. For giving me when I didn't deserve. She leaned back against him. You gave yourself that, she said. I just nudged the door. He nodded, pressing his forehead against her shoulder. Outside, someone shouted. Piñata time, Maddie burst into the kitchen. Pink dress flaring, cheeks flushed. Come on, she demanded. You're both late. Auntie says we can't start until the adults are here, 'cause last year Noah knocked himself over and she stopped mid-sentence, eyes dropping to the object on the counter, the paper airplane, flattened from years of being taken out and looked at, but still intact, tucked inside a small frame. You still have it, she said softly. Of course we do, Grace replied. It's ugly, Maddie observed. It's perfect, Ethan said. Maddie shrugged, then grinned. Okay, she said, but if we ever crash, I'm blaming your flying. She grabbed their hands, one in each of hers. Her fingers were small and stucky and absolutely certain. Let's go, she ordered. There's candy to rescue. They followed her out into the backyard. The sun was starting to dip, painting the edges of the clouds in gold. The maple tree swayed gently above them, wearing strands of paper lanterns like jewelry. As Maddie wound up to swing at the piñata, Ethan slid his hand into Grace's. She laced their fingers together without looking. This was not the life he'd imagined when he'd first started punching numbers into a garage computer in his 20s. It was messier, louder, so much better. One exhausted red-eye flight, one blunt sentence from a little girl, one choice to stay in a hallway instead of walking away. They had all conspired to rearrange everything. If this story stayed with you, if it made you think of the tired faces you pass in airports, or the ways a small kindness might change more than, take a moment to like this video so more people can find it. And if you want more slow, cinematic, healing stories about second chances, found families, and the courage it takes to let people in, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for listening. And until next time, be gentle with the tired hearts you meet, including your own.